Welcome to another solo episode of the Patio Pondering Podcast. I've been in a contemplative mood lately because of conversations I had at Iowa Pork Congress, Ohio Pork Congress, and in phone calls with friends and colleagues in the pork industry. And over the past week, I've had a chance to let those conversations kind of stew inside my brain as I've been watching curling at the Winter Olympics. In the last episode of the Patio Pondering Podcast, I explored the potential disruption the pork industry might face if we ever truly eradicated PRRS. In that conversation, I reflected on how PRRS elimination, while biologically desirable, could trigger significant structural and economic consequences for our industry. After recording that episode, though, another thought kept nagging at me, and frankly, it's a thought that's been nagging at me for years. And honestly, it centers around something some of us have acknowledged, but I don't think we fully grasp, and that's frustration. There's frustration not because PRRS exists, but frustration because PRRS keeps adapting. Because one of the most consistent themes I hear from producers isn't outrage, it's exhausted. We introduced a new strategy to prevent or deal with PRRS. There's early optimism. Stability improves until it doesn't. And then we introduce a new protocol, a new technology, a new solution. And for a while, they work. And then PRRS shifts or leaks. Or PRRS simply wants to remind us who's really in charge. And many of those PRRS solutions don't fail dramatically. They erode quietly. Confidence fades. Stability slips. And we have another break. And not necessarily because someone got careless, but because PRRS keeps adapting. And that cycle wears people down. Because producers are doing what they're supposed to do. They invest, they upgrade, they follow guidance, they listen to the veterinarians, they chase best practices. They are trying to do the right things. They're trying to raise healthier pigs. They're trying to reduce stress. They're trying to control disease. And still, PRRS refuses to play by the rules, which leads to a question I'm hearing more often, and usually in the quiet corners of meeting rooms, in private conversations at trade shows. After decades of investment in PRRS research, diagnostics, monitoring, and production practices, what has actually changed at the slat level? Because PRRS is still occurring. PRRS is still destabilizing herds and is still adapting. Now, that doesn't mean we have not learned anything over the years, but it does force us into an uncomfortable question about return. Here's where another tension creeps in. We often talk about investment in PRRS research as if it's enormous. But when you look specifically at Pork Checkoff funded research, that investment totals roughly $17 million over decades. $17 million for a disease that has caused billions in economic damage. So now I find myself wondering, is that a massive investment or a surprisingly modest one? Are we underwhelmed by outcomes, or have we been expecting miracles from funding that was never scaled to the magnitude of the problem? I've heard PRRS research compared to cancer research recently and in the past, framed as a battle requiring commitment, patience, and sustained investment. And I understand the sentiment, but I'm not sure the comparison holds as cleanly as it sounds. Because cancer research does not create a scenario where success destabilizes an entire industry. You see, in cancer research, victory is almost purely good news. In PRRS eradication, victory may be biologically good, but economically and structurally disruptive. And if the cancer analogy does hold even partially, then PRRS research is not massively funded. It is dramatically underfunded relative to the scale of the problem, which leads to yet another uncomfortable question. If PRRS has cost the industry billions, what level of research investment would actually be required to change the trajectory? And are we willing to fund at that scale? Or are we caught between wanting eradication but not fully prepared to either the cost of solving it or the consequences of success? Because eliminating PRRS does not just affect pig health, it forces system-wide change. Because we'll have more pigs, we'll have a massive strain on production and packing capacity. It will require reconfiguration of the industry. It will further put pressure on consolidation, and it will force producers out in an industry that doesn't have many producers to force out. The supply expansion in the face of stagnant demand will push prices down. That tension is real whether we like it or not. There's also the reality we rarely discuss openly. Our production systems are calibrated assuming a baseline level of mortality. Pig flow, barn capacity, labor, packing plant throughput, farrowing schedules are all designed with losses built into the math. That's not a moral judgment, that's a structural one. Loss is not just tolerated, it's assumed, it's expected, and it's needed. There is also an entire economic ecosystem built around managing PRRS. Diagnostics, products, technology, services. Again, this is not about motives, it's about alignment. Is it possible the industry has over time become more comfortable managing PRRS than imagining a world without it? And that's not because anyone prefers disease, but because the known struggle sometimes feels safer than the unknown consequences of success. So the question becomes, are our incentives aligned with solving PRRS or with managing it indefinitely? And at what point does continued investment without clear, slat-level change remain strategy or become faith? Some would say blind faith. I'm not arguing for an answer here. I'm wrestling with questions because two things can be true at the same time. PRRS is bad for pigs. And eradicating PRRS could destabilize the entire pork industry. The investment has been meaningful, and the outcomes still feel stubbornly familiar. We believe that eradication is the right goal, and yet the implications of actually succeeding make many people uneasy. So I'll leave you with the question I cannot shake. If PRRS has cost us billions, and we are still debating we're investing too much, too little, or in the wrong ways, are we asking the right questions about PRRS? Or just repeating the ones that feel safest?